Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little knife right here. This is the Herman Knives Sting. So, first off though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Polish Custom Knives for sending this little guy along. They are, if not the only retailer of Herman Knives, the main one, certainly to the States, and they also sell a bunch of other custom knives, generally by Polish makers, but nevertheless, they reached out to me, said, hey Nick, I think you should check one of these guys out, they're really good, and I told him, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, it might be junk. They still sent it along. We have to assume, though, that this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and also that I'm doing my best not to let this affect the quality of my review here. I also want to thank my buddy Tony Meader, who's another Blade enthusiast. He's kind of nuts. I met him at Blade Show. It's nuts in a great way. But he actually reached out to me sometime back and said, Nick, you need to check out Herman Knives. They're doing really good work, and indeed, yeah, they are. But it always makes it a lot easier, especially if it's just some random custom maker that I hadn't really heard of. It's a little trickier, but it was very nice to have that second data point there. So there you go. Next thing, let's do a size comparison real quick. This is a big-ish knife, but it's actually not all that crazy big. Here it is against a Spyderco Delica, an Ontario Rat number 2 here. And here it is against your Spyderco PM2. So you can see here that although in terms of sharpened blade length, we're very similar to the PM2 here. We are coming in just around 3.5 inches, a little bit, well, okay, not even there. We're like 3.3 or something like that inches. Nevertheless, it's a bigger knife, but it's actually not all that practically big in the pocket here. If we compare this to the Spyderco Delica when closed, this guy compacts down to a relatively small size. So we can see, put this on the Delica, this is not so much bigger in any meaningful way than it. So it's a very nice size, actually, for carry. Then finally, what the heck is a Herman Knives? Well, this is actually one guy named Bartosz Herman. I'm sorry about mispronouncing your name there. But he is a custom maker out of Poland. He uses CNC, as is probably pretty apparent to you at this point. But they are custom-ish, but he has models that he makes over and over again. And this Sting model is one of those models. So anyways, let's go on ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So the good side. This is the Sting, so it may or may not glow to indicate orcs. It hasn't glowed yet, but I've also not seen any orcs yet, so, you know, I'm not actually sure. I'll let you know if I ever see an orc and it starts glowing, I'll tip you in there. Sorry, it's a Lord of the Rings joke. Okay. Anyways, more realistically here, the clip on it actually works very, very well. You know, a lot of people are saying, wow, that's a really long clip for a relatively small knife. It is, but I actually really like long clips on knives. There is very little downside to that, and it really gives you strong positive engagement. You know, I am absolutely sure this is only coming out of my pocket when I want it to, and that's a beautiful thing. And honestly, it's very well done. It's got a lot of ramp to it, but because it's got some sunkenness here, it's not so high. It fits very well over the material of your pants. It is a nice clip. It's a well-done clip, and it works just beautifully for carrying the knife. So that's good. And next thing, this guy has very easy lock bar access. What I mean by that is you can see here that he's got this second, the lock bar is sort of put into the titanium scale. So it is a liner lock of sorts here. You can see these are the 2 screws for for that there. But there is enough scallop on this side, it's very easy to reach in there and pop that open and closed. And the lock bar tension is very light, so it works very, very well. I'm a big fan of the lock bar access here. It's very easy and pleasurable to unlock, which is kind of a strange thing to say about a knife, but hey, there you go. I'm full of strange things. Next thing, this guy actually has a lot of really nice design details. I'll kind of cruise you over it slowly. The biggest thing for me is this milling pattern. This is really freaking attractive. It's sort of a weird hourglassy thing. I don't even know how to describe it necessarily. It's not a sunburst. It's not really anything else. It's just, and you can see here that he's done it on both sides, although it's interrupted here with a smooth region underneath the clip here, which is a good thing for getting it into and out of your pants. But he's got the same pattern on both sides. Very, very nicely done. You can see he's got very nice milling on the inside of the lock bar, well, the lock bar touching surface, if you will. It's got to be a technical term for that, but I don't have it. It's got a very, very nice little backspacer in here. It is a floating backspacer. I'll see if you can see it float. Yeah, there you go. Now you can see the flotation going on there. It's floating on little tiny washers that you saw in the disassembly video. Confused me greatly until I figured everything out. But also the back spacer, hopefully you can see this, has a very nice sort of point to it, if you will. It can kind of, yeah, there you go. You can see that the back spacer kind of dives down at a point that really complements the natural angle of the blade. It's a little detail, but I am a sucker for a beautifully designed back spacer, and this is 100% that, which is good. It's also worth noting, by the way, that although you can definitely see the blade down in there, even with my relatively small fingers, I'm not able to touch that, so that's a beautiful thing. And the back spacer wraps around here very nicely. The front of the blade touches right up here, well, not touches, but is smoothly contoured here and then here. And then just overall, I think it's just a really, really attractive design. It's subtle, but there's a lot of really good stuff going on here. The polishing, for instance, on the screw tips. You can see here that the screws are going all the way through the titanium into the other side there. That's something I'm not generally a big fan of, but you can see that what he's done here to make that good, to make it really attractive, is he has beautifully rounded and polished these screw tips. So it just feels like a design touch more than it does a construction fact. And here's the same thing for the lock bar insert that you can see down inside there. That's kind of cool. I really think this is a very nicely designed knife. It's low-key. It's very subtle. But at the same time, every time you look at it, you see, and then, you know, the clip is following beautifully the curve of the knife overall, and mirroring this little area here with the, every time I look at this, it's like, yeah, this is really cool. This is a nice design. So I like the design on this guy very much. Then finally, on the good side, the action on this guy is awesome. Has a beautiful freaking detent. Pops loose 100% of the time. Deploys very easily. The close on it is beautiful. Absolutely excellent closing action. It's not the drop-shuttiest of drop-shutty actions, but it is very, very good. It is easily in the 98th percentile of your various drop-shuttitudes out there. It's good. It's real freaking good. The action on this guy is very nice. And it's doing this detent. It's doing this easy deployment using a relatively light lock bar tension. So it's very easy to unlock. There's just no freaking problem there. I just like that a lot. This is just a really, really nice action. So to me, all of that is the good. It's this awesome action. It's got lots of really nice design details here that just make the knife feel, it's subtle, but when you look at it, it's just like, damn, someone spent a lot of time thinking about this. And I love that. It has very easy lock bar access. The clip on it works very, very well, and it may or may not glow to indicate orcs. So far, it's been 100% accurate. On the great side, this has a great blade. What I can show you here is, to start with, it's M390 steel, which, of course, there's more to steel than chemistry, but so far, this has been good steel. No problem there. But it has a very, very nice abrupt plunge grind. What I mean by that is that we go from ricasso to full blade edge very quickly, which then couples with a beautiful sharpening choil here, which is good. And then it is very thin behind the edge. If we look at the tip of this knife, I'll see if I can get us to focus. Yeah, that's thin. That's really freaking thin. And then couple that with the M390 and just frankly a nice shape, because you've got some flat, you've got some belly, you've got a nice sharp tip on this guy. It's a good blade. Every damn day I carry this. Every time I take it out to cut with it, it's just like, oh, yes, 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 indeedy. This is good. This is real good. And so I just like this blade so damn much. This is a beautifully done blade, and just nice. So to me, that's what's great here, is the blade is just nice. On the bad side, to start with, it is an expensive knife. It's $540 shipped to the U.S., $590 within the EU with the VAT, value-added tax, I think that means. That's a good chunk of change. But the thing is, looking at some of the other custom stuff out there, that's in line, right? Looking at what they've done here, it's not like I feel like I'm getting ripped off with that. That's a fine price. That's a price I absolutely pay. So no problem there. But it is expensive. That's going to put it out of range for a bunch of people. Next thing, it is definitely pocket pecking. Oh boy, is this guy a little pocket pecker. And unfortunately, one of the design features I like least about this is that the flipper tab is a little bit hooky. What I mean by that is that you've got kind of a sharp corner at the front there, and that is not super comfortable on the finger. This is not a knife that's super pleasurable to just go back and forth with all damn day. It works, I do it, but I would kind of like to see a smoother flipper tab, something more akin to this. These are Pena Knives Diesel, by the way, rather than this kind of hooked forward thing. Whatever, not a big deal. Next thing, as you can probably see here, this has a proprietary pivot tool, or a proprietary pivot. I don't love that, ever. They include a tool here, and it works just fine. You saw me use it during the disassembly. But as I've always said, you know, using a proprietary pivot and then including the tool is like kicking me in the nuts and then handing me an ice pack. It's a very kind thing of you to do, but why did you do it to start with? The other downside to this particular approach is that this tool is sideways mounted. So what you'll do is you'll kind of get this such that it fits into the proper slot here, and then you have to rotate it on this axis, as opposed to if the pivot tool were, for instance, given to you in the form of a bit where you could just put it in there and do that. That would just be more convenient. So the thing I probably like least about this knife, personally, although, you know, there were other issues, but, you know, it bothers me a little bit at a fundamental level that it's got this proprietary pivot. That's not bringing me a lot of joy. Whatever, not a huge deal, but ethically speaking, it does bug me. At least he includes the tool, though. So there you go. Next thing, this guy has screws that go directly into the titanium on the other side of the scale here. Is this a huge problem? No, but it's never something I particularly like to see, because, for instance, if you do strip out these threads, there's not a whole lot that can be done for you. As opposed to if it's a Chicago-style screw, that's going to be much easier to replace. I've never actually had a problem with this, but it always scares me just a little tiny bit. Whatever, okay. Next thing, this guy does have a little bit of lock stick. It does come and go, certainly. And the best way to get rid of it is just to remove any oil from the lock face. But this knife seems to be more sensitive to lock face oil than many of the knives in my collection. Yeah, there's a little bit of lock stick, but again, it's never to the point where it's like, but you can definitely hear the click on occasion when you do unlock it. It's never too bad, but yeah. Next thing, there is a hot spot from the clip here. Ergonomically speaking, the knife is very good, except there is a little bit of something. You feel the clip digging into your hand a little bit. It's kind of worst right here, and this could be very hand-specific. If you choke back a little bit further, it's not as much of an issue. But I can definitely, and if you have big hands, I can see this little area being a little bit of a hot spot. I like the clip enough for carry that I'm willing to forgive it, but it's definitely a hot spot there. And then finally, availability is a problem because there just aren't that many of them available. It's a, you know, one guy made CNC custom knife. I mean, he seems to have some available, and I'm going to do my best to time this review such that you could actually, you know, get them. But nevertheless, availability will not be straightforward relative to something that is in production, etc. So, to me, those are the bad things, is that availability is a problem. You get a bit of a hot spot from the clip. There is a little bit of lock stick, not too bad. The screws are going into the other side, but honestly, and I pointed out the polishing on there. If you're gonna do it, this is the classiest freaking way to do that ever. So no big complaint there. It is using a proprietary pivot, but he gives you the tool, but it's pocket pecking with the flipper tab and a little bit hooky, and the price is definitely up there. On the ugly front, there is only one ugly issue in that, and that is that the disassembly on this guy is very, very rough. This is just not a great disassembly. I am not a big fan of the disassembly process here. The reason for it, I mean, there were a bunch of reasons for it, but the biggest one for me was that the screws, they're right underneath the clip. So the thing that you need to access to close this guy off is hiding under the clip. So you have to remove the clip first. And one of the clip screws, by the way, is one of the screws holding the knife together. And then in here, you've got little tiny bearings that are kind of slipping out of the scale. This really, to me, felt like a final exam in knife disassembly. Like, I'm very glad that this was not the first knife I ever, started to take apart. Because, that would be tough. So this is not a good knife to disassemble. And plus, you have all the little washers holding this together. I mean, watch my disassembly video to get a sense of it. But, that's not a pleasure. And that's something I don't generally support because it's a knife that's running on bearings, etc. I mean, a frame lock flipper, you are going to want to be able to maintain this guy, and making it as difficult as it is here, not something I'm a fan of. So to me, that's the ugly, is that disassembly was not straightforward. Not a big fan of that. But final conclusion, look, at some level, this knife has a lot of things that bug me. It's got a pocket pecker with a bit of a hook. It's using a proprietary pivot with a tool included, at least, but still, proprietary pivot. It screws straight through the scale, and a disassembly process that was not amazing, and the price is going to sting a little bit, because, yeah, it's definitely up there. But at the same time, this does a lot of things great. It has a great design. It's just a very classy looking knife to my estimation. It has a really great clip. It has lots of little details here that just bring me a lot of joy. An awesome action, and a really, truly excellent blade. I like this blade a lot. Actually carrying it, actually using it, the blade is freaking great. And it's just a very subtle knife at some level. You know, you take this guy out, and I don't necessarily mean it, yeah, it's gonna be a little scary to some people, but this is not a knife that you take it out, for instance, you know, for another knife person, and show it to them, and they're like, oh, immediately. But then they start to handle it, and when you look closer, it's like, oh, that's well done. Then you look closer, oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, and then you got a little cutout right here, so your finger lands on an easy spot when you do the flip, and just like, oh, and then look at that, and then, oh, that's perfectly flush here. As you look closer at this, it gets better. And that's a really good sign for a custom knife. It's not flashy, it's not showy, it's not over the top, it's not coated in moku dye or anything like that. It's just a good, really basic knife. But and you look closely, all the details are there. You've got this subtle anodization on here, which, by the way, I didn't really mention, but this subtle bronze over gray thing, it's magnificent. And so when you look closely, the details are there and they're accounted for, and there's really nothing disassembly process aside which I can point to and say that is wrong. That is incorrect. You screwed this up. I mean, maybe the lock stick could be done, but again, it's not at the level where it actually really bugs me. So I really did appreciate that, and it's got a charm to it. What I mean by that is that I carried this knife for review. Obviously, of course I'm going to carry it for review. And then I got to the point where I felt like I was okay with it, but then I kept carrying it, and I found myself carrying it and making excuses. Like, well, I don't know, I have to get a better sense of the lock bar tension. Oh, well, I'm going to be doing a lot of box breakdown at work today, so I better bring the Herman just to make sure it's looking okay. You know, the kinds of total BS that I sell myself when I'm trying to keep carrying a knife. And I came to the conclusion ultimately that it's not that I wasn't ready to review the knife, it's that I didn't want to stop carrying it. Because when I'm reviewing things, I have this easy license to carry something, whereas otherwise it's like, oh, I could be carrying for something for review. But I just like this. And from this process here, I just eventually realized that I just like the damn knife. That's why it took me forever. I wasn't ready to stop carrying it. And so from this, I have to conclude that although it is not without flaws, there are definitely things that bug me. It is a very nice knife. It is absolutely, in my opinion, a gem. And so I really, really like this piece. Then as I was finalizing this review, I sent a message on Instagram to Polish Custom Knives and asked, you know, hey, are you going to have more of these guys available soon? You know, because I'm thinking, when should I post the review? I want to do it when there's some availability for people. And he sent me a picture of a few of them that were available right now. And one of them was in Damasteel with very subtle blue on it, same model, etc., for $725 shipped. And I am weak, and I love this knife. And so, yeah, that's on the way from Poland now. I suppose you could say I got stung multiple times. So I guess my final conclusion, if people always ask me, Nick, should I buy one? I did. But I'm insane. But it's really, really nice. It is a gem, 100%. And that was a very easy, like, take my damn money purchase for me. I really, really like this piece, and I think they did a really excellent job. So I think that's a recommendation. So anyways, final conclusion. Well done there, Mr. Herman. Please, for the love of all things holy, work on disassembly a little bit. Maybe get yourself a Torx bit. I don't know, just saying. But mostly keep up the good work. This is a really, really nice design, executed well, and I will make sure to follow up once the Damasteel one arrives. But honestly, if this is what getting stung feels like, then oh man, give me the whole hive. Anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. I suppose you could say this knife has a fair amount of Polish to it. Okay, anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now. Did I just repeat the outro after my pun? Yeah, I'm not a brilliant man. Bye now.